We are simulcasting 49ers Webzone No Huddle, El Sacco, Brian Reddick, and 49ers Rush with the fan favorite, John Chapman. Chapman,
What's
how you
going
doing,
on,
buddy?
guys? Oh,
What's
doing
up,
great.
man?
I got the bat signal this morning from the great Al Sacco, and I was like, all right, I ain't saying no to this one. So
I
very
woke
happy to
up.
be here with you guys, man.
I literally woke up and said to myself, I want to talk to John Chapman on the show today. And I opened it up. I put out the
Things
bat
my
signal,
wife
and here he
has
is.
never said. Things my wife has never said.
Dude, I'm getting to that point, you guys, where like football starting to consume me again. Like I had things to do today. I did. I had responsibilities. But instead, I just looked at fantasy stuff for like 2 hours. Because the one thing that's on my mind right now, I need wide receivers in my dynasty league, and I have the 6th pick. So is it going to be like Xavier Worthy? Is it Lad McConkey? Like, who am I looking at? That's all I'm thinking about right now. I'm at that point where football is starting to consume me. And if I get through another season without getting divorced, great. All the better. But if I do, that's life.
All the
That's
better.
life.
All the better.
You'll get that compensation pick update on the following year draft if that takes place. So that's the good
There
thing.
you go. There you go.
True.
Do I get a compensation pick if I get divorced? I should.
Only if
gotta
she
put
gets
that in the
picked
league
up.
rules.
Only if she gets picked up by an opposing team.
She'll get picked up. Nobody's picking me up, but she's not going to have any issues, I don't think. All right. I wanted to talk, or we wanted to talk, I should say, what some training camp stuff, just things we're looking at. But Brian can't go a show without talking about Brandon Aiyuk. So Brian, go ahead, bring it up.
Listen, it's the storyline. Can we at least agree that regardless of how often we've brought it up, it's not quarterback talk? Like that's, I mean, guess that's the saving regardless, grace. I'm like, that's a win in my book. But no, we, obviously you and I, Al, talked ad nauseum about that situation on, was it Monday? Today's Thursday. Was it Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Regardless. But one of the things that I thought was interesting that has come out since then, and I'm not saying I'm lending any credence to any of these, but it's just an interesting idea, and I wanted to get your guys' take on it. One of the rumors that has floated around and has been kind of picked up, at least on 49ers Twitter, whether or not it's valid, I have no idea. It's not coming from any reliable source. It's not coming from a Silver or Garofalo or Chef or anybody, right? But one of the ideas that has been floated around is that there is a connection between Brandon Aiyuk and the Las Vegas Raiders. That connection being Antonio Pierce, their head coach, Arizona State guy, Brandon Aiyuk, Arizona State guy. We know if you've been watching receiver, Davante Adams is not terribly happy in Vegas. One of the ideas that's been floated is there a trade to be had between the Raiders and the 49ers in which Aiyuk goes to Las Vegas? And in return, the Raiders are sending Davante Adams. Maybe there needs to be more than just that, but that's more the meat of what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to get your guys' take on the idea of where would you stand if in a trade, regardless of what extra comes in, just that part of the trade, Brandon Aiyuk for Davante Adams, where would you land on that in terms of I'm in, I'm out? I think it's a great move. I think it's a bad move. Where would you guys stand on that?
Right off the bat, I got to say, and this might not be popular, Davante Adams is a better wide receiver than Brandon Aiyuk is. And now at this stage, he's 31 years old. He's signed through the year 34. Brandon Aiyuk's 26. So one of them's kind of ascending in Brandon Aiyuk, and one of them's kind of at that peak plateau point. Now, you look at what the 49ers have done this offseason, almost everything is like, we're competing now. If this is not helping us now, then we're out. You look at all the free agents they signed, log in the tooth. They're not building the back end or backups with undrafted free agents. It's, man, we're going and getting vets. Logan Thomas, Devondre Campbell, like Eric Saubert. We want vets that have played at these spots. So if it's just take everything else out of it, salary cap, whatever else, Davante Adams in, Brandon Aiyuk out, Davante Adams is a better wide receiver, in my opinion. And I think probably most NFL evaluators would probably agree. Al, do you agree with that?
I do agree. The one concern I'd have with it is receivers tend to hit a wall. I've seen it with Julio Jones and Hopkins. Sometimes they just come out and you're like, AJ Green. You're like, what happened? And it usually is around 31, 32 years old where that happens, which is where Adams is. So would that worry me? Yes. But I would look at it in this way. And if this did happen, it's probably the way the Niners are looking at it, is that, look, we're only going to have Aiyuk for 1 more year. We're not extending him at what he wants. We may tag him, but it would be a tag and trade. This is a 1-year thing with Aiyuk. We're going to run it back with him this year. and then likely move on. If that's the way that they're thinking, and it's a 1-year trade-off for the two of them, because Adams has no guaranteed money left after this year, and you would
Correct.
say too, okay, anything we get from after Adams this year is gravy, right? But we're just going to look at it as 1 year for 1 year. Yeah, I would take Adams too. I mean, like you said, he's the better wide receiver. He comes in the Shanahan system with a quarterback and Purdy who's going to take some chances and just, throw it up to him sometimes, give him opportunities. To me, I think you're nuts not to say Davante Adams there, knowing that, is he on the decline? Possibly. And would I rather have Aiyuk for the next 4 years? Yes, 100%. Because you're not going to get another great 4 years from Adams. But for 1 year, just this year, all in, I agree with you. I would go Adams.
Yeah,
and he's played in the system.
Yeah.
LaFleur, like he's been
correct.
part of.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah,
and obviously did well.
It's hard to argue against it for this year, right? And one of the things that you and I talked about, Al, was like, again, this idea that the 49ers have really waited a long time, late into the offseason, to sign some of their stars. And we highlighted Kittle, Debo, and Bosa, how each of those signed really late. Bosa obviously very late, and all of them had very down years that year. And if the 49ers are competing for a Super Bowl now, again, would you rather have Davante Adams in a trade that occurs within the next week or two so that he can come into camp and you can do that? Or would you rather have Brandon Aiyuk on a 5th-year option who missed most of camp? I think I would rather have Davante Adams. Now, that doesn't, to me, that's not a move for the future. That's a move for a Lombardi this year. And I think it's a great move for a Lombardi this year. But I do think you hurt your team long-term. Now, the question becomes, do you hurt your team long-term financially if you give Aiyuk the extension that he's looking for, which for all reports and all intents and purposes, we're looking at 28 to 30 million APY, right? He wants to beat Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra is 28 a year. And so, do you go 28? Do you go 29, right? Do you beat that? Do you hamstring yourself for the future? Possibly. As far as roster talent, that you are taking a dip in future years because, again, Davante doesn't have any guaranteed money. Likely that they wouldn't, restructure that in any way to give him guaranteed money past this year because he'd be going into his 32, 33, 34 year seasons. I don't know that they'd be inclined to do that. So it's not a move for the future. It's a move for now. But to me, it's the only option on the table that is palatable to me out of all the options, including making Aiyuk play on his 5th-year option, including, the possibility of him holding out. Like, of all the possibilities that we've talked about, Brandon Aiyuk for Davante Adams, to me, is the most palatable of all of them. And so whether or not it happens, I doubt it. But, you never say never, right? And, it'll be interesting to see. Ultimately, I think Kyle Shanahan is the one that's going to step in and make this thing happen, whatever it is, whether what he makes happen is a trade like that, what he makes happen is Brandon Aiyuk getting signed, because Kyle Shanahan is the one that steps in and makes all of these things happen, including the Debo signing, right? So that's really where I'm at. But it is an intriguing idea to me. And I do think that a disgruntled Brandon Aiyuk playing on his 5th-year option does not help the 49ers' chances of the Lombardi as much as a happy Aiyuk with an extension does. But Davante Adams absolutely does. Maybe even more than a happy Aiyuk. I'm not sure. But it would be quite interesting. And that would be a hell of a receiver core with Davante Adams, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall. Like, that's, everyone talks about how many weapons Brock Purdy has now. If Davante Adams ended up on this team, people would lose their minds.
They would. It sells so many jerseys, obviously Fresno State, all that stuff, the connections there. But the question is, like, what would that cost, right? The practicality of it. Is it just an even swap? Do you get something in return? Do you give something? Like, we don't see this in today's NFL, especially position for position trades. And so I don't know. Watching receiver and seeing Davante Adams literally sign off on firing the head coach and Jimmy Garoppolo to bring in Pierce, like they seem like best buds. They're like the Brian and Al Sacco of the Raiders. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't know why they would make that decision, but it's fun to talk about. It always is.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's certainly going to be an interesting next 6 weeks or whatever while all this stuff kind of shakes out. But camp is around the corner. I mean, I know we're all really excited to get it going. I think where my mindset is with camp this year is this window is getting smaller and smaller and smaller with the guys that we've come to know the past 5, 6, 7 years. You know, just Kittle's getting older. Williams is getting older. There's been changes on the D line. McCaffrey's not going to play forever, right? You got to start finding new people. And I feel like there's guys this year, they're going to need him to be part of this next window. And that's going to kind of be what I have my eyes on in this camp, is not only the Ricky Pearsalls and the Dominic Pooneys and Garendo and guys like that, but also some of these undrafted free agents that they've signed. And I talked about this with Larry Kruger recently too. The Niners are so good at this, at bringing these undrafted guys, and guys like Evan Anderson at the D-line. Drake Nugent is someone I think who could be a future center. Cody Schrader, we've seen them bring these running backs in from everywhere. I guess where are your eyes right now in training camp? Are there certain players you're looking at out of these young guys, certain spots? Where are you guys at with this right now?
My favorite thing going to camp is to see the rotations, who works with the ones, the twos, what spots they're at. And I feel like right now, man, there are so many like Ricky Pearsall, obviously, you know, he's on NFI. Where is he going to be lining up at? Mm-hmm. Is he the X? Is he the Z? Is he behind Debo? Is he the slot? Like all that stuff. You throw the same thing out there with Jacob Cowling or Tatum Bethune. Is he in role for the Sam linebacker spot? Or is that going to be DFF versus D Winter? Like there's a lot of the 49ers returned almost the majority of their roster.
Yeah.
But due to injuries and or just players leaving, man, who's quarterback 3? Is Isaac Yadam really going to be the guy who started all of OTAs and mini camps outside? Is he going to be that number 3 and kick Demo in? Is Renardo Green even getting the number 2 nickel snaps, or is that Chase Lucas? Is Samuel Womack moved inside finally where he should be? There's a lot of intriguing storylines just about personnel and how the 40, because that tells us what their future plan is and their red shirt philosophy that they always do.
Yeah. And
yeah,
what
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say, speaking of Yadam, one of the things that I think is interesting is that question, right? Is Yadam going to be on the outside? Are they going to kick Demo inside? It sounds like that is the scenario they would prefer, but they know that Demo is really good on the outside. I know this sounds conspiratorial, and it kind of is, but one of the questions I have is Demo also is going to be in line for a contract extension after this season. Slot corners do not make as much as outside corners. Is one of their thoughts, look, we kick him inside and then we negotiate him as a nickel corner. And if push comes to shove and we cannot sign Charvarius Ward to a number that we agree to, or whatever the case may be, we've got Demo that we know we can throw back outside, paying him nickel money. I mean, like I said, it's conspiratorial nature, but I think that's probably at least part of some of the thought process, outside of the fact that Demo would be great in the slot. I mean, he really would. He's a willing tackler. He's a great blitzer. Those are all things that you need to be if you're going to play that nickel spot in this 49ers defense. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see the rotation at corner, especially because, again, both Demo and Charvarius Ward are going to need extensions after this season, or at the very least, Ward is going to walk after this season. But Al, you brought up running backs. The amount of running backs they have in camp is wild, right? Because they drafted Garendo and they brought in Cody Schrader, and they still have Jordan Mason, and they still have obviously they still have CMC, and they still have man, he's injured so many times. I'm
Elijah Mitchell
right now. Thank you, Elijah Mitchell. That's a lot of talent at the running back position, in which they're probably only going to carry 3 because Juice makes 4. And so are they looking to possibly move Elijah Mitchell? Is Jordan Mason's pass protection, has it gotten better so that he can actually have a fighter's chance at making this roster? Or is Garendo or Schrader going to show, hey, not only can I pass protect, but I, especially Schrader is not going to blow you away with his athleticism in any stretch of the imagination. But what he did in the SEC, you don't do if you're not talented, right? Like,
oh, sure.
It just is what it is. He's a guy that really understands the outside zone, which is the scheme that they run, and is really good at running it. His vision is elite. He has one cut and go ability. You know, that's the kind of thing that Shanahan looks for. And so while he's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination, could he be a guy that supplants Mason because he shows that he can pass protect? Whatever the case may be, it will be interesting to see. But I think wide receiver, I think is going to work itself out. And I think we already know at least 5 of the guys that are going to make the squad.
Great. So yeah, I think 5 are locked in.
Yeah. So to me, running back is intriguing. Cornerback is intriguing just to see the rotations and hopefully to see the fact that Ambry Thomas isn't getting on the field at all. That's one of the things that I hope to see as well. No offense,
Look, there's a world where Mitchell and Mason are not on this team.
Agreed.
I mean, I could see it happening. You know, Schrader, I've heard people compare him to Blake Corum light.
Mm-hmm. He runs like Blake Corum.
Yeah, we know that they how much like Garendo. Obviously, they spent a high pick on him. So there's a world where both of those guys are gone. Mitchell's great, but he's always hurt. At what point do you have to cut bait? He's in the last year of his deal. You could probably trade him. And Jordan Mason's the guy that the fans love. We love to watch him run the ball, but I don't think Kyle Shanahan does. Kyle Shanahan clearly doesn't trust him. He doesn't get on the field. So running back, yeah, I could definitely see a world where it is Garendo and Schrader and CMC, obviously. You brought up the secondary a little bit earlier. And John, you mentioned like what guys are they going to redshirt this year? And I think that's a really good place to look where their head's at because Demo's a free agent. Ward's a free agent. Yadam's on a 1-year deal. Hufanga, if we want to look at the safety group, is in the last year of his deal. So what is the long-term plan there? Do they plan to bring back 2 of these 3 guys, or are they going to groom, I don't know, a Luter, a Green, guys like that to take over because they only maybe plan to bring back one of them. So that's what's going to be interesting for me to see is who, like you said, who's where, who's playing inside, where do they have people, you know, lined up? Because if Yadam has a great year, you can't re-sign Yadam, Demo, and Ward. You can't afford those 3 guys. And Hufanga, what are you going to spend? $45 million a year on your, you know, on those 4 guys? You can't do it, probably more. So that's going to be really interesting. They have decisions to make there. And who do they have lined up where, and which of these young guys may be able to step in and start as early as 2025?
Yeah, and I think the Niners, I don't think the Niners know the answers to these questions. I think the way their personnel and the way in which they order their depth chart and picks and everything is, look, okay, who's leaving next year? I call this the Laken Tomlinson plan, right? So, like, who's going to on an expiring contract? Let's draft a backup. If they prove themselves, awesome, we move on. If they don't, then we just keep the stud. And so you've got a Drake Greenlaw backup, Hufanga backup, you know, Demo, Charvarius Ward backup. You've got, you know, Banks. He's on the last year of his deal. His back, like they're peppered all throughout this entire thing, even the Ricky Pearsall pick. And so it's just like, look, let's just go into it. Let's see what happens, and we'll reevaluate this if they can prove themselves. And if they don't, then that kind of dictates who's going to be brought back and who isn't. We thought Aaron Banks was the biggest bust ever because that dude got no snaps. He was a healthy scratch every single game. Steps up, starts every single game his sophomore year, and everybody's like, all right, I hope he returns to his sophomore level of play this year, by the way. But now you got Dominique Pooney taking snaps behind him at left guard. He's actually behind Ben Barch, though. That's another thing. Like, not
Pooney
the sexiest. Yeah, he was at certain parts. So Barch got moved to center because all of our centers were hurt for OTAs. So, I mean, Ben Barch was taking first-team center snaps. But the one thing that I keep telling people is, like, Chris Forster loves Ben Barch. like he loves that dude. He has a bobblehead of him on his car dashboard. I promise you. That's not true. I'm making that up. But we'll have to see how it all pans out with this rotation. And, you know, Shanahan don't want to play any rookies, but when injuries happen, and they always happen,
right?
That's when Elijah Mitchell gets his chance. That's when, you know, all these whatever get a step in and get an opportunity. But it's not by design. It's, man, we got an injury. Let's see what the young guy can do.
Well, and it certainly feels like you said, actually in the chat here, Uncle Salty says the Kyle's redshirt program continues. It really does feel like the pattern that they've developed is we will sign mid-level veterans to 1, maybe 2-year deals, right? And then we will also draft players at that position. And then we will plug those veterans in because Kyle Shanahan obviously trusts veterans more than he does rookies. But if that veteran falters, you've got a rookie that if they prove themselves, right, they step in. If not, they step in the following year because you're not re-signing that veteran or whatever the case may be. And it definitely seems like they're doing that.
Sorry about that. That was my fault.
No, you're good.
The one thing I would want to add to what you just said, Brian, again, a little nuance to it. Now, even in the draft this year, they didn't draft like all the rookies are like veteran rookies.
True.
They're all 25, 26.
Yeah, I'd say they're like mid-20s.
So
like,
maybe
that was the draft as well, though.
The shift is, look, let's get these guys that we can rely on. Again, that's not what I'm saying they're doing, but that could be a shift or an adaptation this year because everybody started 30-plus games beside Isaac Guerrero. Everybody else played a lot. He's the only one that really hasn't started. Even the undrafted free agents, they've played a lot. So maybe that shift's taking place, but I doubt it.
I think that was to me, that was a perfect storm of what they were looking for, which was experience in college. That's the Brock Purdy effect, right? Like, hey, Brock is the way that he is because he started, however many games in a Power 5 conference, but it was also the draft, right? This is the last COVID draft. A lot of these guys, were COVID guys, right? So they're coming out at 24, 25 because of those COVID years. We're not going to see that again. We're not going to see as many 24 or 25-year-olds, but we may have seen a shift in draft strategy after the success of Brock Purdy to say, look, we drafted Trey Lance, the poster child of not enough experience. And then we drafted Brock Purdy and look what happened. Let's start applying that philosophy to other positions besides quarterback. And I think we kind of saw that this draft. And so I'm wondering if it's both, right? It's a change in philosophy and the COVID draft, or it's a change in philosophy, and we'll see it again next year when they have a bunch of rookies that are 22, 23, 24.
I think for me too, the biggest concern right now to me is the defensive line, and they revamped it. So they were concerned about what they saw last year, and they revamped with new guys this year to bring in. And when I look at the defensive line, I mean, since this regime came in, they have built this team around the defensive line, right? That has been a priority with their first pick, Solomon Thomas, right? We're going to build around the defensive line, and that's what they've done. When I look at this year's defensive line, you have Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is an absolute stud, right? Javon Hargrave, to me, I don't know if I brought this up with you, that Chapman. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on him if I get through with this. Is he didn't have his best year last year. He's in his early 30s. Is he declining? Is he still Javon Hargrave? We already know he's not a good run defender. Then you have Malik Collins, which is a signing I love, but again, it's a short-term thing. He's pushing 30 years old. Leonard Floyd is likely just going to play on passing downs again, early 30s. And then you have guys like Gross Matos, who I think is going to play a huge role this year, but completely unknown. Jordan Elliott, all over the place with the Browns. Kevin Givens, Drake Jackson, Kalia Davis. These are just kind of guys. That's why I brought up Evan Anderson, to somebody like that step up. I'm worried. The run defense wasn't good last year. I don't know it's going to be any bit better this year, especially if you don't have Drake Greenlaw back there to start the season. That's my worry there. Is Chris Kosir going to work his magic? Are we going to find some Ameni Hughes out of this group and guys that we didn't expect? Or are we going to be in November again like, holy shit, this is a problem?
So number one, Hargrave, I'm with you. I would argue he had the worst playoff and Super Bowl contribution of any player on the 49ers roster. He was abysmal. He was terrible, and he played against not one but two backup left guards in the NFC playoffs and got toasted by both of them. Both those same guys, Javon Kinlaw, rolled over and dominated. And you even have Hargrave coming out saying, I got to be in better shape. So the age is rough. And you talked about run defense, right? So Javon Hargrave finished with a 51.4 Pro Football Focus grade against the run, which is not good. That's the highest of every single defensive tackle the 49ers have on their team.
Yes.
It's not good. Now, what they did to combat that is all the defensive ends they brought in, great versus the run. So you've got these really, really good. I mean, you went from Randy Gregory and Chase Young, who are lost every single time it's an outside crack toss play, to Yetur Gross-Matos. He's kind of getting paid because of what he does against the run. Leonard Floyd, the length and strength and leverage, great versus the run. Nick Bosa might be the best defensive end against the run in football, but you've got these stacked defensive ends that are great against the run. The defensive tackles, not so much. And you brought up Evan Anderson. He is a lock to make the 53 for me. I think it's him and Kalia Davis. Yeah. And I think Evan Anderson's going to be that guy. You just watch the tape, and it's like, man, the Niners don't have that. Now, an outside shot is Shaquille Brown, who, out of Troy, that they stole from the Titans, Rand Carthon. So, like, they've got some back-end guys that are just run stuffers, first, second down players only. But somebody's got to step up, because Malik Collins is a very good player. He's not a run stuffer. He never has been. That's not his role, or has been his role. And so Kevin Givens, no. Jordan Elliott, no. That dude was a pass rush specialist only from the inside. So somebody got to step up. I'm scared of it too. I do like Devondre Campbell. I do like our safeties. I do like that we have strengths at nickel. I think that's going to help. But, man, if there's a red flag on this defense, it's stopping the run. Duo. Like double teaming whenever, the duo plays where you double team both guards. The 49ers operate with the fewest light boxes in the NFL in defense because we stay in our nickel and we don't crowd the boxes. We don't. We stick to what we do. Man, if Malik Collins and Hargrave can't anchor against double teams, like, it's going to get scary.
And look at the teams who have to, not to jump in on your price, sorry, but the teams they're going to have to compete against.
Right.
The Eagles are going to run the ball with Barkley this year. The Lions, that offensive line. The Rams scare the shit out of me this year, at least offensively they do. The Packers are going to, you get in a game in January with the Packers and you hand it to Josh Jacobs 30 times. Cowboys will never scare me because they can't win a big game. But everybody else, all those other teams, right, they can attack you with the run, and that's why I'm worried this year.
I mean, look what the Rams did with their guards, right? They invested a shitload of money in their guards. They are absolutely going to run the ball on the interior on everybody. And the 49ers are going to play them twice. And it will be very, very interesting to see what that looks like. And like you said, John, they don't have an interior presence that anybody knows can stop the run. They've got guys that we think can, right? We've got guys that have the potential, right? Guys that did it in college, but nobody that we know can. And the other thing is, I mean, if you don't have Javon Hargrave is going to be on the field almost every down, right? You're not taking Javon Hargrave off the field for because of what you're paying him. And we can talk about whether that was a good decision or not. I mean, I was over the moon when they made that signing before the season, and then the season happened, and you're like, oh damn, that was not at all what I expected. So then the question becomes, Malik Collins, the guy that you essentially brought in to replace Eric Armstead, if he can't stop the run, when does he get on the field? Because if he's just a pass rushing D tackle, then again, you're losing the flexibility of your Yetter Gross-Matos, who, you have to be a run stopper on the outside, but likely moving inside, right, in obvious passing downs. But then Malik Collins will be there and Javon, right? So the rotation is so there. I don't even think they know what that rotation is going to look like yet. And it's really going to kind of, I think, not even really shake itself out until, I would say, after the first quarter of the season, when they actually
it's going to take time.
Yeah.
You're four
to play games. Yeah.
You're four.
Right.
Now, who's the 5-6? And I'm sitting here screaming Evan Anderson, Kalia Davis, if he took some steps up. But if not, like, I would not be shocked. Shanahan's notorious for this, the training deadline, getting these back into the roster guys on the defensive line. Like, that's going to be happening again. I hope that it doesn't. But Kalia Davis, Shaquille Brown, T.Y. McGill, like, we're still doing this. Like, this is still happening.
Right.
Yeah, Evan Anderson, that was, to me, and I said this on our show after the draft, that was the one undrafted free agent that I thought was a lock for this roster because of what he provides, and also because they gave him, for an undrafted free agent, a very high signing bonus, which to me was like, it really kind of signaled, yeah, we're keeping this guy. But he's a rookie, right? And you have no idea what you're going to get from a guy like that. Kalia Davis, again, a guy that we really don't know because he redshirted his first year, didn't get a whole lot of time last year either. So, Al has been sounding the alarm for run defense for the entire offseason. And I don't think we're going to know until well into the season whether or not we can expect this team to stop the run or not.
And if John's worried about it, I'm really worried about it. It makes me more.
Oh no,
John's always
no.
positive, and if he's worried, I'm really worried. And on the other side of the ball too, as we're talking trenches here, the offensive line's it's not great other than Williams. It's getting older. Feliciano's in his 30s. Brendel's in his 30s. Trent Williams, as great as he is, in his late 30s. And McKivitz, was a replacement level right tackle. And Banks, like you said, John, like he didn't have as good of a year last year. So I think Pooney can step up and maybe win one of these spots on the interior. I really do. Not Banks, but I think maybe he can beat out Feliciano. Center, who I know that they like Brendel, but you said if somebody like Bart, I don't know, anybody that the Niners, I feel, can like surprise us with someone who's like, okay, we've been grooming this guy, and all of a sudden, boom, somebody could step in, because Brendel's another replacement level guy. So that worries me too. Again,
let's say Chris Forster also has a Jake Brendel bobblehead on his dash as well. That's part of it.
But he's one, to me, that's where they get in trouble. And when you're playing these Chris Jones guys, you got these replacement level guys, especially on the inside.
Yeah.
And again, they're a year older. And a lot of these guys have played 60 games the last 3 seasons, and they're in your 30s. And that's why I hope one of these young guys steps up and can really take the reins. And I don't know that Kyle will start them right now, but at least maybe towards the end of the season, they can pop in there if they need to, because I'm worried there as well.
I think the 49ers offensive line gets a lot of flack, probably rightfully so. The one area that I don't think that they get enough credit for, and again, this is a little bit revisionist history on my part, Niners haven't drafted really any offensive lineman in the past 2 years. Just Dominic Pooney, that's it. That's the only guy. One offensive lineman in 2 years. I do think that the backups are solid. Not saying that they're starter level, but I do think that they have depth on the offensive line at every single position. I think Jalen Moore is a pretty good backup left tackle, and he's played relatively well when Trent goes out. I don't think he's starter level, but I think he's a pretty the offensive tackle position in the NFL is the least talented position. You got 64 starters, right? 32 teams. I think there's 40 good offensive tackles in the NFL. That's
It's a league-wide problem. Yeah, for sure.
And so to have backups like Jalen Moore and Colton McKivitz, not great, but he came in 47 last year. I'm looking at PFF right now. All right. 47th. There's 64 starters. You're getting what you get. And there's not you can go out there and just get somebody that's way better, because it doesn't exist. You brought over Chris Hubbard. He was the 36th rated tackle last year. It's a bad position. And, whenever Chris Forster talked, he's like, there's a line. If we can get above that line or at that line, we're fine. If we can go above and there's somebody available, great. But we're not just going to draft somebody that can't beat out Jalen Moore, that can't beat out, I don't know, Spencer Burford.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a great offensive line. I don't think anybody in the 49ers would tell yet, but the continuity, all 5 starters, including your top 2 backups, interior and outside, they're all back. They know the system. I don't know. I was under the impression, look, you got to protect Purdy. Let's see how good he can be. Let's get him offensive linemen. Shanahan and Purdy said, no, let's get him more weapons. That's how we're going to see how good Purdy is.
Forster said that as well. He's like,
I don't like the line, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe they just feel our system is good enough and what we do is good enough that, you have a stud at left tackle, and if we get base level play everywhere else, we're going to be fine.
Again, the problem rears its head in the postseason, though, when you go against defensive lines that are elite, especially on the interior. It's the interior of the line that scares me every year. It's not McKivitz is not great, right? But Colt McKivitz isn't the reason that the 49ers were getting so much pressure in Brock Purdy's face. It was 100%. The interior of the offensive line. And
the backup interior, not even a starter.
Exactly. And I think they drafted Dominic Pooney because he's versatile, and they only draft versatile offensive linemen. Let's get that out. And people need to understand the 49ers are only going to draft versatile offensive linemen. They're never going to draft a behemoth right tackle that can only play right tackle. They will never draft that guy. Right. People are like, why didn't they keep Trent Brown? Trent Brown would never work in this system. Shanahan is like, no, that is not going to work, right? We want guys that are versatile, mainly because those guys tend to be more athletic, and you want athletic linemen in the zone blocking scheme. But one of the things that Pooney excelled at was pass blocking. And if you can get that on the interior at right guard, right? Honestly, if we could get to a point in the season where John Feliciano is the center and Dominic Pooney is the right guard and everything else stays the same, I would be over the moon about that. And whether or not that happens, I don't know. I don't know if they're even running Feliciano at center, and there we go. That, to me, that is your best offensive line. I don't think that's going to be your offensive line game one, but could that be your offensive line halfway through the season when you're comfortable with Pooney? I absolutely think so. And Pooney has shown that pass protection is one of his best assets. And so now you've got Pooney and Feliciano, who are both great pass protectors at center and right guard, and Banks, who's a decent pass protector. And all of a sudden you are holding your own against the Chris Joneses and the DJ Readers and those guys like that. So to me, that's my hope. Like I said, I don't think we're going to see that coming out of camp, but if we could see that at some point this offseason or this coming season, to me, that is the ideal offensive line.
The one thing that I agree with you, and if I could put my best five out there, it would be Feliciano at center and Pooney at right guard. And this is one of the things I want to see at camp, because at OTAs and minicamp, Dominique Pooney was playing left guard only. Like, he wouldn't take a right guard. Spencer Burford was. And so, like, now again.
So is he just there to replace Banks next year and he's going to redshirt this year? That worries me.
I think that's the plan. And again, you go back to Chris Forster's comments whenever he said the most talented guy in our guard room is Spencer Burford. He is the most talented. He said the second guy is Dominique Pooney. But then he goes on and expands that, you look at Burford, consistency is an issue. But as far as talent level, length and athleticism and all that stuff, Burford 1, Dominique Pooney 2. And so it's the plan. Those are your two guards next year. The redshirt philosophy, I think that holds true. But, man, I want Dominique Pooney practicing both guards, because I'm with you, Brian. I'm with you.
Yeah, and when you look at some of those Super Bowl highlights, there's a number of reasons why the Niners lost those 2 Super Bowls to the Chiefs, but some of the big highlights are pressure up the middle, knockdown passes, missed assignments. Chris Jones is wreaking havoc, and it's up the middle, and you hope to learn from their mistakes.
Up here with Burford. It's up here with Burford.
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. All right, what else didn't we hit on? Oh, you brought up the third string quarterback. I'm hearing good things about Tanner Mordecai.
Why not, man?
The Niners apparently really like him. And I don't think Dobbs or Allen are assured anything. So I think that's wide open behind Purdy.
Not after Sudfeld, right? Like, this is the post Sudfeld, Nate Sudfeld world, which I never thought that would be a timeline that existed. But like, and this is what we do as fans, as content creators, whatever. Like, we fall in love with the undrafted free agent, whoever running back Shanahan gets, and now we're in the Purdy Sudfeld battle. It's like, ooh, could Tanner Mordecai be the next Brock Purdy? Which I don't think that, but I will say this, he's a Waco kid, went to OU, jumped around SMU, everywhere else. I had the pleasure of working with some coaches who have been around that program and around this kid. Every one of them says, don't doubt him. He's unbelievable, did so much with so little. So you plug somebody like that in this system, it's like the goldfish model, right? You get as big as the environment allows you to. He's been I don't know the right word, understaffed, under-supported by a supporting cast almost everywhere he's been. But I think quarterback 3, we'll see. I know Shanahan loves him some Brandon Allen, though. He loves that dude, man.
Listen, and I don't know if you guys know it, but Tanner Mordecai was drafted by the DC Defenders in the UFL draft a couple days ago. So
Schrader got drafted too, I think. I
Schrader
saw a few Niners
so did Evan Anderson.
So
did Evan Anderson, yeah.
And so if they don't make the initial 53, then they can report to those teams afterwards. If they make the initial 53, I think it voids it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Obviously I'm just being facetious here, but and honestly, like, third quarterback, I mean, if that is the biggest hole in the roster, I'm going to be okay with that, right? Like, I'm not that concerned. I really love the Josh Dobbs signing. I think that is a tremendous signing. It's a guy that can support Purdy. He's brilliant. He's got a brilliant mind. And he's just a good dude that is going to really kind of support Purdy. And if God forbid Purdy went down, I see somebody say that Dobbs can't run this offense. I don't know that that's true. I think he could hold the fort down. I think if Purdy went down for the season, Probably not, but I think if Purdy went down for the season,
yeah.
you're screwed anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like Tom Moore said, you know, once he was asked, Tom Moore ran the offense with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis, and someone once asked him, like, why don't you ever let your second string quarterback practice? And he says, well, we don't practice fucked, right? Like if Peyton Manning goes down, it doesn't matter. Like we're not going to practice that. There's no point. So, you know, kind of same thing. If Purdy goes down, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really matter. So, yeah, I think, you know, I think Allen probably wins out just because of his familiarity with the offense, which, you know, is an important staple for Shanahan. But, you know, Mordecai is intriguing. And, you know, again, if he doesn't make the 53, then he goes and plays for the DC.
Here's my question: over under. Are we going to hear Shanahan say, "Well, we got 4 guys we really, really like 20 times"?
No, not anymore. Not anymore. He's got his guy. He's got his guy. He doesn't have to hedge anymore. There's no hedging from Shanahan anymore.
Maybe 3 guys we really like to ask him about the backup spot. All right, wide receiver. I think we all agree that there's going to be 5. Obviously, Aiyuk, Debo, Jennings, Pearsall, and I think Cowling's a lock too.
I do too.
Who is your 6th?
Trent Taylor.
I would go. You say Trent Taylor? I think Chris Conley.
So here's why I think it's Trent Taylor, because Chris Conley doesn't really do anything on special teams, which is where you need to make your hay if you're going to be a 6 wide receiver on this team. I think Trent Taylor is the punt returner to begin the season because he's reliable. He's not going to drop it. He's not going to run it back. You're not going to get impressive punt returns. But I think after what happened in the Super Bowl, and Kyle Shanahan's just like, I just want someone back there who I know will catch it. And even if he doesn't return it, at least he catches it and we don't get a turnover. So I think, to me, I think he has the inside track, but we'll see, because I guarantee Cowling and probably Pearsall will get their opportunities back there. And if they can prove themselves to Shanahan, then maybe Trent Taylor doesn't make it. But if nobody really kind of brings themselves above the fray in training camp and in preseason when it comes to punt returns, I would not at all be surprised if Trent Taylor makes this team.
I don't disagree. I could see the Willie Snead, like, oh, you're cut, but we're going to promote you the first 2 weeks. Like, you might not make the 53, but we're going to pay you enough to get there. And, you know, Shanahan always does these backroom deals with the guys that he, you know, knows, and like the Kerry Hiders. Hey man, we're going to let you go, but you're coming back. We're moving this guy to IR. You come right back. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think Danny Gray, and I know that's like weird, but I think there's ceiling there. And I thought he was doing really well at returner last year in training camp before he got injured on the first play of the preseason, which is not something to laugh at, but I did. I don't know. It's just bad. I'm not the biggest Ronnie Bell guy.
Neither am I.
You got a punt return. So that 6th spot, I don't care about wide receiver. Who's going to be your punt returner? I do not believe in having rookies punt returners ever. And when Ronnie Bell did it last year because of all the injuries to Ray and Danny Gray, I was like, oh, this sucks. So Danny Gray, Trent Taylor, I don't know, man. You got to put somebody back there. Somebody's got to do it. I don't like
Danny Gray coming back from the dead. Yeah, Danny Gray. Listen,
not?
If you're right, man, you called it. You called it if that ends up happening.
I don't know if I want to be right. I don't want to be
right. All right. Only other position we got to talk about, I think, is tight end. So obviously you got Kittle. I like what they did. If Logan Thomas is healthy, I really like that. You have another good, reminds me of a Jordan Reed type signing, right? Just that kind of veteran pass catcher. Then they bring in Eric Sauber, who again is going to, maybe fill the Charlie Warner role. And then you have Braden Willis there too, who can come in. I actually like where they are at tight end this year.
What about Cameron Latu, Al?
I love that.
He's not even in my brain. Yeah, I know, dude, not even in my brain. To me, he's already like like we hear Shanahan talk about him, like, I don't think he's got a prayer. So he's not even on my radar. I think he's got such an uphill battle, man. Like, that
was like the most harshest statement Kyle's ever had on a player not named Jimmy G.
Where I forgot who asked, try to hide it.
They were like, is Cameron Latu just going to be the tight end too? And Kyle like laughed. It was like, no, you got to at least practice first. Like, and then guess what? He didn't practice all of OTAs or minicamp. We'll see. That's one of the ones, like, if Cameron Latu is not cleared to start training camp, like, throw in the towel, man. It's DUN.
Yeah, it's over.
Cameron Latu, 3rd round pick.
I'm a big Braden
guys.
Willis guy, though. I'm a big Braden Willis guy. And I think that guy, I don't think that they asked Kyle Juszczyk to take a pay cut without Braden Willis on this team. And
That's where Braden Willis is.
I went back and listened to because I'm a sicko, the John Lynch press conference when they drafted Willis, the post-draft one from last year. And he said, we think he could play fullback for us as well. And like, they love special teams. He's all over the place. He got snaps in the Super Bowl at tight end. They weren't good ones, but like, I think Braden Willis is a part of this team's future personally.
I have always said I think Braden Willis was drafted to be Kyle Juszczyk's replacement. I don't think he was ever drafted to be an inline tight end or even a Y. I think he was always drafted to be Juszczyk's replacement. And I wouldn't be surprised if after this season, Juszczyk is gone and Willis is the starting fullback for sure.
Yeah, that next window. Get ready for that next window. All right, you guys. Thanks everybody for listening. Subscribe to 49ers Rush Podcast, subscribe to No Huddle Podcast, and follow both of us on YouTube if you aren't already. Appreciate you.
Rate, review, subscribe. We'll be back next week. John, great to talk to you as always. And
legends. Hey, you guys are legends.
Al and John meeting in Buffalo in week whatever that is.
Yeah, if y'all are going to be in Buffalo, we're probably going to be there too. So
I love it. Later.
All right, guys. Thanks.